Welcome to Chapter 3, the Stakeholder Approach for Business and Society. Our chapter this time takes us on over to the concept of the stakeholder. A stakeholder is an individual or an organization. It's an entity that has an interest or a share in an undertaking, an activity, something to be done, and they can be categorized as having an interest. Yes, they're interested in it. They have a view that they're not what you would call ignoring it. They are interested. They have a right. Maybe they have a legal right or a moral right, and maybe at the very definitive point, they may have even ownership, and this is where they possess it. You can go from various levels of just an interest, a right, all the way to ownership. In this diagram, or in this slide, and the following slide, we're going to discuss three different views of the firm. The earliest one was just a simple production view. Suppliers, and notice that arrow is in one direction, suppliers provided supplies. They had no real voice in what was going on, and the firm took their supplies, their products, their materials, and produced them into a product or service and sold them to customers. The more advanced of the two in this slide is the managerial view of the firm. There you have suppliers who do have a voice because you have the arrow going in both directions. The corporation is communicating with them. Maybe the supplier says, we'd like to be paid in a more timely manner, or we'd like for you to consider viewpoints that we have. The owners, they deal with management and the organization. The owners are the principals, and the organization, the managers there are the agents, and of course they manage the employees. And the employees, they may have some demands of pay raises and benefits and other things that they would like for management and the organization to do for them. And finally, you have customers. Same thing. There's a two-way direction. This right here is the economic, the stakeholder view of the firm, and it is probably the most well, it's a kind of topic or view that we would use in our textbook. And that's basically that business, which is in the center of this diagram, has to deal with multiple stakeholders, whether it's government or it's employees, owners, consumers, or community. You know, the government might be three different levels of government. Employees could come from various groups, whether it's minorities, women, or older people, or unions, etc. The owners may be private citizens. They may be institutional groups. Let's say that in California, CalPERS, California Pension Fund, and retirement for the employees of California, they buy companies and they have demands on companies. Consumers can be their average consumer. They may be somebody suing the company, or they may be activists pressuring the company. And finally, the community. These are people out there that don't want the company to pollute. They don't want the company to introduce bad elements into their community. There are civic groups and so on. This is a more complete view of how stakeholders deal with businesses. Here you have a stakeholder typology. We're looking at views of power, legitimacy, and urgency. The dormant stakeholder is not doing much. You know, he has his power, but he doesn't do much with it. He's just there. The discretionary stakeholder, they decide when they're going to do something. A demanding stakeholder, the demanding stakeholder is there demanding their viewpoint. Now, it's in 5, you really need to be careful with the dangerous stakeholder. The dominant stakeholder could be an issue too. 6, it's a stakeholder who's not doing much. And finally, number 7 is the definitive stakeholder who possesses all of the traits and exhibits them at one time or another. when you deal with stakeholders, there's going to be opportunities and there's going to be challenges. When you have opportunities, you have the opportunity to build good working relationships with stakeholders. And there's cooperation, and sometimes these stakeholders bring something to the table of value that the company wants. And so it's win-win for both sides. The challenges, they deal with how the firm handles its stakeholders. Sometimes companies don't do a good job of handling stakeholders, and always there seems to be a potential for threat. In this typology, we have two axes. We have stakeholders' potential for threat to organization, and this could be high, it could be low. And then we have potential for cooperation with organization, and again it's high or low, and we have 4 quadrants. This one here is a mixed blessing. You're going to have stakeholders who have a high threat to the organization, but they have a high potential for cooperation. You need to collaborate with them, and you need to work with them. You have over here in number 3, in quadrant 3, you have the non-supportive stakeholder, or the typology. You know, these are the people that have a high threat to the organization, but they're not going to cooperate much. And what you do there is that you monitor them, and you have a defensive position. In quadrant 1, we see that it's supportive. It's low threat. Oh, great. You know, the sweat is off, yet there's high potential for cooperation. The strategy there is to involve them, to get them working. And finally, in quadrant 2, is that there's not going to be much cooperation, but they're not much of a threat. It's marginal. So all you do is just monitor, watch them. You don't have to really spend much of your effort there. Finally, in this slide, the concept is developing a stakeholder culture. Our textbook authors, they would have us in organizations try to move all the way over to the moralist and altruist side. Altruism is giving something for nothing. It's when you don't expect anything in return. You know, when you see a community organization, let's say HEB, or it could be Toyota, and they give scholarships to students, which is something very nice, and yet they have pictures taken of them holding the check up, and they're really, it seems that yes, they're doing a good thing, but they're expecting some kind of monetary reward or advertising or goodwill or something. They're giving something for something in return. That is not altruism. At the very opposite end, we have the agency, which is that, on one of the earlier slides that we saw where managers, they report to the owners and they make production happen, and that's about it. And so we run from agency through corporate egoist, instrumentalist, moralist, and altruist. If organizations can make it to either moralist or altruist, they're in fine shape.